Hello, welcome to Pushing Cardboard, and today we're going to take a look at how to play, a bit of a review of one of, it's not exactly a new game, but it's new to me, and certainly a new game system to me. We're going to look at Stonewall's Sword from Revolution Games. This is the, I think it was the first game of the blind sword system by Hermann Luttmann. I think that might be right. This is just the header page. My copy was a Ziploc bag copy, so I don't have a game box to show you. But yeah, the Stonewall Sword, the Battle of Cedar Mountain. This is regimental scale, American Civil War battle. The hexes represent, I think, about 140 yards across. Each turn is about 20 minutes, and the counters either are infantry regiments or individual artillery batteries, basically. I think this game maybe came out 2012, somewhere around there. It flew under my radar. I only sort of discovered Revolution games in the last 5 years, and but I'd heard some good things about these, and Revolution was having a sale, so I picked up a few of them, and decided to start with the earliest one in the series, Stonewall Sword. This game's got a beautiful chit pull mechanism where your chit pull cup is filled sort of half with events for each side, and then half with your brigade leaders. So there's a bit of a twist on the chit pull with this game, in that if you have a brigade leader that is in charge of, say, anywhere between 2 to 5 regiments, when you pull that chit out of the cup and it's their turn to activate, you get to choose which one of those regiments that leader activates at that point. You do the moves for that regiment, and then as long as that brigade leader still has other brigades that are yet to be activated, that leader goes back in the cup. It's not like you have to choose one over the other and not get to move the other ones. Everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone. There's one count. There's a random event counter that'll wipe out a brigade activation each time, and that'll mess up some of your best plans. And there's also each brigade leader is also rated differently for effectiveness. So when you pull one of those brigade leaders out of the cup, you have to roll versus their effectiveness. And if somebody's got a poor effectiveness, like a 3, you have to roll a 1, 2, 3, or you're only going to get a limited activation, which means you're going to get to do hardly anything with one of that brigade's regiments, whereas a really good leader might have a 5, and then so you've only got a 1 in 6 chance of getting a limited activation. So all that to say, I really like the chit pull system in this game, and the maps are by Rick Barber. The graphics are Rick Barber and Charlie Kibler, and I know most people I've run into really like Rick Barber maps, and so do I. I can see how some people might prefer a sort of a computer-generated map, but these hand-drawn and hand-colored maps are just beautiful as far as I'm concerned. I really like them. The chit pull system makes for a really back-and-forth game. I haven't played it enough to have any sort of feeling about what the balance is like or anything like that, but it's so much fun to play, to see. I'm sure that to see who goes next, which regiments, which brigade commander, which regiment is going to go next, which one's going to get messed up by bad luck, or as I mentioned earlier, both sides always end up with a handful of special events in the cup as well, and all those events, whenever you pull one of those events, you either play it or save it for later, but they're sort of evenly split between things that are better for your side, or things that mess up your opponent. So it might be things like they send one of his regiments wandering off in the wrong direction, or changes his attack orders from attack to defend, and so completely slows him down, things like that. Yeah, the chit pull is probably my favorite thing about this. And, you know, this particular game, it's just a one mapper. There's two scenarios here. One is the full, I think it's maybe about 14 turn game. And then there's a smaller scenario that I've got set up that I'll show you in a minute. That is, it's sort of a learning scenario where you start on turn 6 and only play to turn 9, and you've got a limited sort of objective there, but it gives you a chance to to learn the game before you tackle the whole thing. It's just a one mapper, maybe I don't know, 1.5 by 2.5 feet, not even, not a huge map. It's it probably. Once you get the hang of the system, I'm thinking this game could probably even be played in an evening between two players who are on top of their games. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it before we actually have a look. So let's see what the map and the counters and the gameplay is like. Okay, let's take a little closer look at how Stonewall's sword works. Here you can see the beautiful Rick Barber map, and the pieces are laid out for the start of the smaller scenario. So the farther side of the map is cut off, isn't used for this smaller scenario. It's just a bit shorter. It's basically the same scenario. It just starts later and ends earlier. So a little learning scenario that you can use that picks up the action in the middle of the game. You can see basically the different colors of greens or different elevations of the hills, and you can see things like these blotchy yellow things is the cornfields. These are obviously woods. Confusingly, the rivers. Most of the rivers that run through this map are dry streams, and they don't have any impact at all. There's just a little bit up in the top corner that actually has any stream effects. So it's a bit strange to have these large illustrations of the blue creeks running through here, but they have no influence on play. Also, I don't know if you can see. I'll tighten that up a little bit. That's a slope. When it's got all the little lines around it, that indicates it's a steeper slope, whereas here is just a regular change of elevation coming uphill. These coming uphill without the slope makes no difference whatsoever, other than, you know, some LOS cases. But the only time when there's some terrain effects is when it comes up a steep slope like that, and sometimes there's even two of those right side by side, making it a very steep slope. So those are those you have to watch out for in terms of your terrain effects. All right, I thought maybe what I'd do here is just sort of go through the sequence of play a bit and show how a turn works. At the start of every turn, you rebuild the chit draw, the chit mix for the turn. As this is a chit pull game, that's kind of one of its best features. So the first thing that happens is both sides have these event chits. There's I think seven for each player, and each player chooses one of his chits that he wants to be in the cup for sure. So for the rebels, I'll choose a rebel yellow chit here, and I'm going to choose a quick march chit for the Union to try and help them join with the enemy quicker. So those go into our cup. Then both sides now have six events left. We turn them upside down and take 2 out, and those 2 won't be in. Those are randomly drawn. They won't be in the this turn. We just set those aside. Don't look at them, and the other 4 go in the cup. Same thing. Same thing for the rebels. We take 2 out without knowing what they are and put the other 4 in. Then we have the brigade commanders on each side that are here so far. We have 3 on the rebel side. There's that a little bit better, more in focus. And on the Union side, we have 2 plus the overall leader, Banks, of course, and Jackson is the overall leader on the rebel side, but he doesn't show up until turn 9. We're on turn 7 here, so he doesn't. It's Jackson's off doing his own thing at the start of this engagement. So these go in the cup as well. So that's now we've got it. Oh, also should not forget these 2 more chits that go in every turn. One is called Fog of War and one is called Fortunes of War. One of them makes the next chit that is pulled be disregarded, and the other one makes the next. It just has a random effect that makes units either retreat or charge. It's just a little bit of a random event for the game. So those go in the cup as well. There we go. So our cup is full. But before we get to pulling our first chit, the game starts with a back and forth artillery barrage each turn for both sides. I think it starts with the Union goes first, and they can either fire or move any 1 hex, all the artillery that's in any 1 hex. The way the game starts, all the Union artillery is kind of up here on this road, so it's not. The Union's going to start probably by moving their artillery, whereas the artillery for the Confederates are in here, here, and here. So they're more ready to fire. So we can see that on a typical artillery pieces counter, you can see that this has got a 6 and a 4. They might have a 1 and a 4, or a 2 and a 3, or whatever. That is the number on the right is the cohesion. You might think of that as their morale, and the number on the left is their attack strength. And the little S beside it there means that it's I think that means it's a smooth bore firing piece, something like that. There's rifled and smooth bore and a mix. So there's no movement factors on the pieces. The pieces have a set number of movement factors. Cavalry can go a different amount than your artillery, and for when we get to time to move the infantry, they move a different amount each turn depending on what kind of an order they've chosen this time. So anyway, we start with the artillery barrage. We could move some of these Union artillery. I'm not going to move them right now because there's no real need to move them, but I'll show you how a barrage works, though. If the Confederates take a shot, the Confederates, if we take a look at, they say they're going to fire this, all the artillery here, and it's 3 artillery units with 1, 3, and 1, and it's rifled, and mixed. And say we were going to try and fire them just right over here at Geary's unit. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So a 7 hex range. There's we have a chart that tells us the weapon ranges, and for a smoothbore cannon have an effective range of 6. Mixed cannon have a range of 7 for 100%, and same with rifled cannon 7. So this was mixed and rifled, so they're all 7. So they're going to get their full 3 plus 1 plus 1, so that's 5. And there's not a lot of DRMs or anything like that in this game. There's a little bit of column shifts, but basically how firing works is we take their 5. That's going to be their total strength points, so they'll be on the 5 table here. So we take their strength points, 5. It's going to be on the 5 table here, and we're going to just do a die roll. And the way the die roll, you read these, instead of like a 6 and a 3 wouldn't be 9, it would be 63, and gives you a bigger range of outcomes in a way. For column shifts, the only thing we have, the target is in a cornfield, so there'll be 1 shift left. That puts us over on the 4, and that's it. So we roll the dice. 11. That's the worst roll we could have. 11 on the 4 column is going to be nothing. But let's just say for interest's sake, let's say I had a very good roll. Let's say instead I rolled a 63. 63 over on the 4 column gives me a range of this red, yellow, or green. Now these numbers refer to the target's cohesion number. The target's cohesion number in this case was a 4. So I look and I see if the 4 is in there anywhere, and yes, it's in the green. So that means the target's going. I have had an effect, and the target's going to have to take a cohesion check on the green chart. We flip this over. Here's the cohesion checks for normal fire combat and for close combat. Roll the dice again. 51. The colored die on green, 5, gives me a D. That means the unit is flipped over. It takes a bit of battle wear, and a 1 under the skedaddle result side gives me nothing. So. But it could make him retreat or lose some more. So to be battle worn, most units are 2-step units. We just flip it over to its other step side, and there we have. That would be the first artillery shot of the game, and that's how artillery works. It's fairly straightforward, and now you also know how. Infantry fire works, because it basically works the same way, except with much shorter ranges, of course. The way the artillery phase plays out is the Union goes 1 hex, and it has to use everybody in that hex that is an artillery unit. Then the Confederates, the Union, the Confederates, back and forth until neither side has any artillery left that they want to either move or fire. After all the artillery is done, and that also includes the cavalry. There's only 1 cavalry piece in the whole game, but I think that goes with the artillery. After that's all done, then we get into the meat of the turn, which is the chit draw phase, and that's where all the brigades get activated one at a time and go at each other. Basically, the way it works is we draw first, if either player had a chit that they had held onto from from earlier in the turn, they could play it now. But if not, we draw a chit from the cup, and if it's like this one, a firefight. If it's an event chit like this, the side whose chit it is can either play it immediately often, or sometimes it's to be held to be played later, or sometimes you have a choice. We'll just say this one is to be played later, and we'll draw another chit, and we'll get one of the brigades so that we can see how a brigade activation goes. All right, Auger. here we go. So this is our first brigade activation. And the first thing we have to find out is whether or not this is a full activation or a limited activation. Augur's number for leadership there is 4, so we just roll 1 die. And if it's a 4 or less, he gets to do a full activation. Well, we rolled a 2, so that's a full activation. If we look on his backside, we can see which of the regiments he commands, and he commands Geary, Prince, and Green. So he chooses one of those, and he's orders them, activates them basically. And when he gives them orders, he's going to tell them, give them either attack orders, defend, maneuver, or regroup orders. The regroup doesn't happen very often. It's sort of when your regiment is really beat up and really needs to get its act back together. The attack, defend, and maneuver are the more likely orders. If you choose to maneuver, you get your full 6 movement points. If you attack, you only get 4 movement points, and if you defend, you only get 2 movement points. But each one comes with trade-offs. If you maneuver, you can move the farthest, but you cannot move adjacent to an enemy, and nor can you fire or engage in close combat, and nor can you roll for any recovery or anything like that. If you attack, you can move right next, you can fire, you can move, you can engage in CC. You still can't recover. Whereas defend, you can move, you can fire and move, but you can't do close combat, but you can do recovery, which is how you get some of the shaken markers or disrupted markers off you and things like that. So that's your choice each time, and you have to announce it. You'd announce it now, and then your opponent, if you had any chits to play to foul you up, he would play those chits at this point and mess up your plans. But let's say Augur chose let's just say Geary, and so we also have a regimental commander chit for Geary, and so let's say we chose a maneuver order. So that means he's going to be activated, and that brigade will be done after the moves. Geary could then make the moves with all the Geary labeled units. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can't get right close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But you can get you can go a full 6 movement points, so that's pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. That. So there we see those units don't need to be flipped or anything like that, because it's the brigade commander chit that gets flipped to let you know that brigade or that regiment has already been activated. We go to the now, because Augur also is the commander of Prince and Green's regiments, that he'll go back in the cup. He doesn't come out of the cup until all of his regiments have been activated. Okay, here we go. Now, the next one out of the cup is from the other side. This is Winder. I'm not sure. I've never heard that pronounced. James Winder, I think. And he is the brigade commander for the Ronald, Taliaferro, and Garnett regiments. Given that Winder's activation number is 3, the Confederate player is going to have to roll a 3 or less in order to get a full activation. Now, if he rolls higher than a 3, a 4 in this case, that means one of his brigades, or one of his regiments is only going to get a limited activation. And in a limited activation, really you have to pick one of the regiments, in this case one of the blue ones, and if any of them are engaged with the enemy, which means adjacent to the enemy, there can be a bit of firing, but otherwise they're just not going to get to be activated this turn. Basically, a limited engagement when you or limited activation when you haven't come together yet really slows you down. So, just in this case, we'll say we'll take the Ronald's division, who is down here, hasn't really joined the front line yet, and we'll turn them over to the activated side, and they're done for this turn. But as Winder also has the Ronald and Taliaferro regiments under his command, he goes back in the cup. We pull another chit, and this is another event chit. That's the Rebel Yell chit, and this is an interesting chit. It allows you to just move any units in one hex forward or towards the enemy by one move, and have an immediate attack on them. But we'll skip that for now. You can save it and set it aside for later in case that's what you want to do. Here we go. We got Ewell this time. Now, Ewell's an interesting case in this particular game because he leads Forno, Trimble, and Early, but only Early starts on the game. Others come later. So we roll for him if he needs a 4 or less to get a full activation. Oh, a 5. So Early's his only choice. So the Early chit is going to be marked as activated, and because that is Ewell's only regiment on board, Ewell does not go back in the cup. He's going to stay out now. Go back to the cup for another one. Oh, I'll just pull one to make it easier. Here we go. Hill's another case. Hill's maybe the best regimental commander here, with 5 as his activation. We roll for him and get a 3, and so on board already is Thomas and Branch's regiments, and he'd be they're back here. Here's Thomas, and ready to come on is Branch here. Now they're not going to get involved in the fighting, so I'm just going to set him aside. But that's a good chit to or a good leader to have. And as the more replacements come on that are under his command, the stronger the Union side gets. Going back to the next one came from the Union side, Williams, and he leads these Crawford and Gordon, these units on this side. Again, we could bring those forward, but I want to show how an attack move would work. So I'm going to just kind of skip over here, and let's say we had on the Confederate side that we pulled the chit to activate Garnett, and got a full activation, rolled for the activation, and we chose an attack order for this regiment. That gives us 4 movement points, but before you do the movement, the game is interesting in that you do that any firing, it goes firing, movement, and then close combat, basically. So we see, maybe we get a little closer here. We see that this unit has a rifled 4 strength points and it rifled weapons, and that means for the cannons have the longer ranges, of course, the artillery, but for most of the infantry, its effective range is 1 hex, and then long range at 50% for 2 hexes, and so that's what it's going to be for the 48th Virginia firing at the 5th Ohio here. There's no column shifts or anything. He's going downhill. That's not going to change anything. So he's going to just be rolling on the 2 column. 51 on the 2 column might be enough to get him something. 51 on the 2 column. Well, if the cohesion of his target was 0, he'd get something, or a 1 or a 2, he'd get something. But I think the cohesion of his target was a 5, so there's no effect there. So they fired, and then the rest of these are too far away, so they're not going to fire. So after any fire takes place, now we have 4 movement points since it was an attack order. So these guys can go straight down the hill here, and these guys can go 1, 2, and straight down the hill here too. Now you'll see I haven't talked about stacking. Basically, the stacking limit in this game is 8 strength points. So because we have 4 and 4, there's no problem putting those two. My hands are better. Putting those two together in the hex. These guys, now, if these guys are 10 on their own, you're allowed to be more than 8 if that's just the way your counter is. So that's fine too. And they'll go 1, 2, or 1. Oh, yeah, 1, and then to there. And these guys are not going to go so far and engage in close combat. They'll just stay there. So we've moved in. These have engaged this unit. This unit has engaged this unit. Because we're going to have close combat, the defending units get to do defensive fire. So in the case, we'll do this this first. In this case, they've got 5. No column shifts or DRMs. 5 points of defensive fire firing back at these guys that are coming at them to engage them in melee. They roll on the 5 column. They rolled a 35. 35 out on the 5 column. If they need somebody with a lesser morale, so they did no. The defensive fire didn't do anything to those guys. I'm going to roll the defensive fire for these guys first, although probably we'd well, actually, sure, we'll do the whole thing. So now we do close combat. Now again, we still use these strengths. So 4 and 4 is 8, but the column shifts are different. Instead of the fire combat shifts, we use these shifts. We're going at 8 to 5, which is we don't really outnumber the enemy by even 3 to 2. So we're going to get no column shifts for that. If 50% or more of our strength points are SM, we'd get a column shift, but we don't. And if we were going up or down, we'd get some column shifts or using the rebel yell. There's none. So we're just going to get a straight up roll on the 8 column, the 8 to 9 column. 43 on the 8. If our defender was a 4 or less, we'd get a result, but they're not. They're a cohesion 5, so no result. Now the interesting thing though about the close combat is even if you don't get a result, you have to roll on the cohesion table. But if you get no result, you roll on, instead of like green, yellow, or red result, then you roll on this white result table, which has more chances of things kind of coming back on the attacker. 56 though is pretty good. BD there means they're both depleted, so they're both going to take a step loss. And 6, the MH it takes a morale hit and retreats 2. That's the defender. So this was a particularly vicious little bit of close combat, as it turns out. Both lead units take a lose a step. So not both of these units, but just the lead unit. I should have designated which one was the lead unit, but as they're identical, I didn't feel the need to. They both take a step loss, and then from the skedaddle column, the defender took a morale hit, which means he goes from good morale to shaken, and that's just a counter like this, which is 1 morale hit gets you to shaken, which drops your stats by instead of being a 2-4, because he's got a -1 he'd become a 1-3 while this is on. And if he gets another morale hit, it goes to this side, and it's even worse. But anyway, so a morale hit here, and then it was also must retreat 2, and that's his choice. So you can just go back up here, and because we push them out in close combat, these guys, if they choose to, could advance into the hex that they push them out of. Of course, they're sitting with 5 strength points, and they'd be advancing right next to a unit with 6 strength points. So anyway, that's how an attack works. That's how close combat works, and we've seen all those tables, and we've basically seen how the chit pulls work. Basically, you keep drawing chits from the cup until there's none left, and then that's basically the end. We haven't done much with these event chits. There's most of them are things you can play on your opponent to slow him down or make him confused. But there's a couple that, like the Confederates have the Rebel Yell that let them have a little quick instant close combat, or there's some quick march chits that give you a little bit of a bonus in movement. So it's they're a big part of the game as well, and the Fog of War and Fortunes of War can really mess you up as well. But anyway, once all the chits are done and out of the cup and they've all been played, that's one game turn over. Then we move the game turn on the game turn track and refill the cup just as we did at the beginning of this little tutorial, and start all over again. And that's the game in a nutshell. There's a few more things, like if you chose instead of an attack order or a maneuver order, if you chose a defend or a regroup order, there's ways to get these shaken counters off, or even to rebuild and get a step back, although that's a little harder to do. But to get rid of these shaken or disrupted counters, that's when the defend and the regroup orders come into play. If you also look closely on the map here, you can see, let's see if we have one. Yeah, there we go. You see a red star there. That means that's a Confederate objective. They get 5 victory points if they can get that. Whereas this black star down here is one of the. There's a black star there. There's another one here. Another one here. So basically the black stars are down here, the red stars are across here, and that's how each side gets their victory points. There's little bits of chrome here, like Jackson not making his appearance until turn 9 of the campaign game out of 14 turns, which is interesting. Oh, that's something I should mention. We saw that the Banks chit was in the cup, and when you draw your core commander, your Banks chit or your Jackson chit in this game, that allows you to pick any one of your regiments and activate that regiment without even having to roll for the activation. You get a full activation no matter what. Even if they'd already been activated, you can reactivate them. And if they haven't been activated, you can activate them, and it doesn't count as an activation. So those commander-in-chief chits are really valuable each turn. But that's about it. That's the nuts and bolts of how the game works. There's your typical terrain chart that tells you what the movement factors for the different the different terrains are. There's not much. There's 3 or 4 different kinds, and fairly simple LOS rules that haven't been a problem for us so far. So that's how it works. I'll be back with some final thoughts. Okay, so that's the basics of the mechanics of Stonewall's Sword by Hermann Luttmann. A really good game. Like I said, I haven't played it to completion yet, so I can't really give a thumbs up or a thumbs down full review in terms of play balance and all that sort of thing. But in terms of mechanics and how much fun it is to play, I'm having a blast. I'm sure I'm going to stick with this system for a while and explore it further. I think maybe the designer designed one game before this one. It might have even been something that wasn't American Civil War. But in terms of the ACW games that Revolution has put out with this system, they've got 5 or 6 of them now. And most of them have been designed by Hermann Luttmann, I think. There's this one, there's Thunder in the Ozarks, Longstreet Attacks, Kernstown, The Day Was Ours, and Thunder at Dawn is the last one. I think I got that one as well. I took advantage of one of their sales recently and got a few. I can't comment on whether they're balanced or not. I haven't played enough all the way to completion yet to be able to say anything about that. But in terms of the mechanics and the fun, 2 thumbs way up for me. I'm really liking this. I'm glad that I jumped on a couple of those titles on one of the sales because I want to try more games in this system. The games come, as I said earlier. My copy came in a Ziploc bag. Most of these games they give you an option of either getting the Ziploc bag version or a boxed version. You pay more for the boxed version, but if you want to save a few bucks, get the Ziploc bag version, and they're reasonably priced games as it is. And if you really have patience, wait for one of Revolution Games' great sales and get 2 or 3 at once like I did. Save on, get a sale price and also save on shipping, which of course is a little more to me here in Canada. But yeah, two thumbs way up for this game, at least in terms of how much fun it is. I'm not enough of a Civil War battle historian to know whether or not this is a good representation of the Battle of Cedar Mountain or not, but I'm really enjoying it and I look forward to playing more games in the series. Thanks for watching the video. Check out the website at pushingcardboard.com, where you can also find out about my podcast, which comes out sort of monthly, or sometimes a little more often than that. And you can always get a hold of me on Twitter at Cardboard Pusher. Thanks again. See you next time.